You all are going to be inspired today. Please help me welcome Kristel Bauer to our stage. Thank you for being here.
All right, here we go. Attendees of my keynotes walk away immediately feeling empowered to make positive changes in their work and in their life. We need to learn how to make the moments in our lives high quality moments. We need to stop waiting and we need to start really living. It inspires people to get off autopilot, to feel empowered, to make new choices. So really actionable things that people can walk away feeling like, you know what, I've got this. My hope for you is that this moment right here is an opportunity for you to tune into yourself. What's working? Great. What's maybe not working as well as you'd like? That's okay. And then what are things we can do to take actionable steps in the right directions? In my keynote talks, I really set out to inspire each individual to recognize actionable points in their lives where they can institute positive change. And I do this with having checkpoints. The first checkpoint that I have for you is a question. What happens when things get tough? What happens then? That's the time where we really need to put in the work beforehand to help ourselves be our own biggest advocates in this life. In a work setting, if you're someone who thinks, oh, I really don't like speaking up at meetings, maybe you don't feel like you have anything really valuable to say in certain situations, well, if you have that belief and that story, that's going to hold you back, that's going to limit you. So if you recognize that, here's the really cool thing. You can say, even though I'm uncomfortable here, I'm going to speak up at the next meeting. And I'm going to be really, really proud of myself regardless of the outcome. Because when you make these intentional choices over time, what happens is you start to have new, more empowering beliefs about yourself. Ready? Here we go. Oh my gosh! I think that my story connects with audiences because I went through my own challenges. I definitely did not always embrace having a growth mindset, and I had to learn with trial and error, putting myself in new situations to be able to figure some of these things out. So I try and be really real with the audience, sharing my own personal stories, the challenges that I've gone through, some of the triumphs that I had. So I think a lot of the angles that I take can be relatable from people in all different areas, whether you're a leader, whether you're in the C-suite, whether you're an entrepreneur. Now, when you're looking to break a habit, it's been shown that replacing it with something that's healthy, that's good for you, can work better. What can I replace that with that's actually going to help me feel my best? What's really cool here is once you have that awareness, you have a choice. So when you walk away recognizing that, you can feel more empowered to make those small intentional choices in your everyday life. Now, at the end of the day, there is always going to be a new stressor. There's always going to be a new setback, and there's always going to be a new goal. So it's really about giving ourselves permission to be happy now, even when the conditions are not perfect. Are you waiting for the perfect conditions to start really living your life? Do you find yourself saying or thinking, I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when this is over. I'll be happy when I go on that vacation, maybe. I'll be happy when that person that's maybe been stressing me out a little bit in my personal life or my professional life starts treating me differently. Now, at the end of the day, there is always going to be a new stressor. There's always going to be a new setback, and there's always going to be a new goal, right? So it's really about giving ourselves permission to be happy now, even when the conditions are not perfect. We need to stop waiting, and we need to start really living. Now, back before I got into the speaking and media space, I was working in healthcare, and I was working in an integrative psychiatry practice, and I started to notice some common trends. I was seeing people who were going through unique struggles, stress-related conditions, burnout, mental health issues, anxiety, whole variety. And I noticed that a lot of people were going through the motions, trying to check all of these boxes of what the world tells you should lead to happiness and success. And it was starting at a young age. I was seeing young people who felt like, all right, I need to get an A on this exam to get into the perfect school, to get the perfect job, and then I'm going to be the perfect person. I'm going to live happily ever after, right? That's how it works, right? We know that's not how it works. There's so much more to it. It's really about how are you showing up? How are you showing up for yourself? How are you showing up for the people in your life? How are you navigating those in-between moments, the day-to-day moments, right? So I started to ask myself some questions like, well, what does it really take to be happy and successful at a deeper level? More meaning and purpose and fulfillment, even when there are stressors, because we know work and life are far from perfect. What does it take to have that inner resilience, to be able to stay grounded and to lean into optimism even when times are tough? What does it take? And I found that there were 3 things that were really impactful, that really made a difference. Now, the first thing was your relationship with yourself. It really does all begin with you. When you're able to show up for yourself, you're going to be able to show up for the people in your life. Now, the second thing was your relationship with others, with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues, with your community. Now, there was a 75-plus year Harvard study, and they took a look at happiness levels. They tracked people for over 75 years. What they found was astounding. Good, high-quality relationships were more predictive of living a long, healthy, happy life than genes, IQ, and social class. So your relationships, they matter. Now, the third thing that I found was your relationship with the world, with your community, with your greater purpose, the things that you're doing that light you up where you feel like, you know what, I'm having an impact. So we're going to start with working on that first one, your relationship with yourself. To do that, I have a checkpoint for you. Now, I am all about checkpoints in life, and these are moments and opportunities for us to take a look at our lives, to take a look at what's working, what's maybe not working so well, and then to be intentional with how we are showing up. Now, these checkpoints can sometimes be tough life events that wake us up, but ideally, we are choosing these checkpoints by being intentional, like right here, right now. My hope for all of you is that this is a checkpoint for you, to tune into yourself, to see what's working and what's not working, and then be able to make some actionable positive changes to help you live the life you really are aspiring to live. Now, this photo, you might be wondering, why am I showing you a photo of myself, my husband, and our 2 kids in costumes for Halloween? But we're dressed up as the Incredibles. And this was taken some years ago. And we're these superheroes, the Incredibles. I love that movie. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. But here's the thing. You can be your own superhero in life. We really can. It doesn't happen naturally for a lot of us. It takes intention and it takes effort. But we have that ability to lift ourselves up, to be our own biggest advocates. Now, when this photo was taken, I was not encompassing being my own superhero in a lot of areas of my life. I was holding myself back in so many ways, and honestly, I didn't even know I was doing it. I had all of these stories about myself, what I could do, what I couldn't do, that really were holding me back. I was afraid of failure. I was afraid of being judged. I felt like I needed to show up and be perceived as being perfect, right? And we know that doesn't work so well. And I was going through the motions in some areas, not really trying to figure out what my ultimate potential was. I was afraid of feedback. And then something happened. My mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer shortly after this photo was taken. And it came out of the blue. It was a complete shock, and it was a really hard time. Now, when we have these hard life experiences, it can lead to a lot of soul searching. So I started to take a look at my life. how I was living my life. And a lot of these things I was afraid of, I realized in the big picture, when I was looking back on my life, those things would not matter. They just wouldn't. It put things into perspective for me. And I made a promise to myself that I was not going to hold myself back because I was afraid. Even if I was nervous or afraid, I was going to lean into it and try to really figure out what my ultimate potential was, and I wanted to help other people do the same. Now, being your own superhero in life, as I said, it takes some effort. Now, my daughter is quite a bit older now, and as you've heard, our family's very into tennis, right? And the other day, I was helping my daughter warm up for a tennis match, and it was early. It was about 6 in the morning. I was drinking my coffee. She's too young to drink coffee, so she's groggy, like, all right, here we are. So I'm hitting the ball back and forth with her, and she's missing some shots that she normally would make. And I noticed that she seems annoyed. She's kind of groggy. She's like, making expressions and noises because she's frustrated with herself. And I gave her a little bit of time to see if she would figure it out. When she still was being a little hard on herself, I said, all right, kiddo, come here to the net. I want to talk to you for a second. And I said, hey, I have a question for you. If you were warming up your best friend right now, and she was missing some shots, what would you tell her? She thought for a second, and she's like, I tell her it's all right. We're out here to warm up. This is fun. Relax, And she started saying all these encouraging things. And I said, exactly. So why in the world aren't you doing that for yourself? We have the ability to be our own coach in life. For some reason, though, a lot of us feel like we have to be so hard on ourselves to get results. But here's the thing, that can actually hold us back. So instead, be your biggest supporter. You're learning, you're growing. It's okay to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes when you're growing, right? And lean into that. Now, my hope for you is that you don't have to go through a tough time to have your aha moment, right? I talked about how with my mom, that was an experience for me where I really did a lot of this reflection and growth. I don't want any of you to have to go through a tough time to feel inspired for positive change. So my hope, again, right here, right now, is to help you with that. And to help you on that journey, I would love for you to take a moment to connect with your future self. Now, this is something that I do with my podcast guests. My last question I ask them is, knowing what you know now, what advice, if any, would you have given to yourself from 10 years ago? I've gotten all sorts of really incredible answers. But here's the thing. You are an expert in you. We need help, we need support from others, but at the end of the day, you know what you need. Sometimes we can get so busy that we're not paying attention. So pretend yourself 10 years from now is talking to you right here in this moment. What would they tell you? What words of wisdom, what encouragement would you give yourself? Now, if I was talking to myself from 10 years ago, Kristel, I would say, you are so much more capable than you are currently giving yourself credit for. You just really have to trust yourself, and you're going to figure it out along the way. Now, 10 years ago, I never in a million years would have thought I'd be standing here with you all today. Well, why? Because I was petrified of public speaking. I was terrified of it. Actually, when I was in college, I had a communications class, and I had to give a talk to a group of maybe 30 people. And I was so afraid. I didn't sleep well the night before. I had sweaty palms. I'm going in. Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. And I prepared as best I could for this talk. And I actually got an A in the class. Teacher said I did great. But I left that class feeling so uncomfortable that I created a story in my head, which was, I am bad at public speaking. And I lived my life with that story popping up here and there. If I had to give a talk at a wedding, oh my gosh, I'm bad at public speaking. Now, when I went through this journey of growth, where I said, you know what, I'm not going to let fear stop me, I had an opportunity to give a lecture at the university where I got my master's. And I had this old story pop up But I said, you know what, I'm still going to do it. I'm excited for the opportunity. I'm going to lean into this uncomfortable feeling. And I gave the lecture, and I was inspired. I was excited about what I was talking about, and I left that day feeling different. I felt excited. And I had an aha moment where I realized, oh my gosh, it's not that I was bad at public speaking, it's that it was new. It's that it made me uncomfortable. When you do new things, you are going to feel uncomfortable. When you're growing, you are going to feel uncomfortable, right? That is part of it, and that is awesome because it means you are pushing yourself in the direction of personal and professional development. Now, if I was able to change the trajectory of my career and my life with that shift in that story I had created, imagine what is possible for you if you give yourself permission to stop believing some of these stories that are holding you back. Now we're shifting gears a little here, and you might be wondering, why is Kristel showing us this video of this super adorable little puppy? I do love puppies, and seeing little cute animal clips can bring boosts of happiness, but really the reason is I want you to recognize how what we see, who we interact with, what we interact with, how it impacts how we feel. Now we know this, right? We know that we're impacted by the people we're around, but at a deeper level, emotions actually are contagious. There's a scientific term for this. It's called emotional contagion. If you're in a room with people who are really, really angry or really, really stressed out, you can feel it, right? Like, ooh, it can make you feel a little bit tense. If you're in a room with people who are inspired and are excited and are passionate, you can feel that. That impacts you. Now, the other day, I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and I wanted to get a change of scenery. So I went to a local coffee shop, and I was thinking about my to-do list, all the stuff I had going on, and I wasn't feeling really fully present. So I go up to the register, I place my order for my tea, and the person that took my order smiles at me, and they say, "Hey, how's your day going?" And I start chatting with this person for a brief moment, and I walk away to get my tea, and I realized I feel a little different. I feel a little lighter. The stuff that I was worried about seems more manageable. And I realized it was because of this 20-second interaction with this person. They were present, they were engaged, they seemed like they really cared, and it impacted how I felt, and it impacted how I showed up for the remainder of my day. This is a huge, huge opportunity for all of us. You are having an impact. When you show up for yourself, you are able to show up for the people in your life. Now, there's even research that showed if you have a friend who lives within a mile of you, and they become happier, you have a 25% higher likelihood of becoming happier too. This is so cool. Such a great opportunity for us to really take ownership over how we're showing up. So how do we do this? All right, this isn't that easy all the time, right? Especially if we're going through different things, if we're feeling stressed, if we have the different challenges. But there are some things that can help. So what I want to talk about is something that pulls from cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, this is the connection between your thoughts, your feelings and emotions, and your choices and your behaviors, and your relationship to these things, because they're all influencing each other. Now, as I said, we all have stories, thought patterns that aren't serving us, right? That can be holding us back. Here's the thing, though, that I want all of you to recognize. A lot of your thoughts are not true. Sure, some of them can be facts, right? Of course. A lot of them, though, are opinions, one potential perspective out of so many options. And some of them are just outright lies. So just because you have a belief about yourself or a situation, that does not mean that it's true, right? Now, this also does not mean that you shouldn't be thinking certain things. I can't be thinking that. I shouldn't be thinking this about myself, because let's try an exercise here. Do not think about the color purple. No one think about the color purple. You are not allowed to think about the color purple. You're going to get in trouble if you think about the color purple. What is everyone doing? We're thinking about the color purple, right? So it's not about, oh, I can't think that, or I can't. It's letting go of this perfectionism around this, right? Instead, it's recognizing I can shift my relationship with my thoughts, right? And I can be intentional with how I'm living my life. I can be intentional with my choices. I can choose a new, more empowering behavior to support a new, more empowering belief.